Hi, this is Tag again, and today I want to talk a bit about straightening AMD pins. Now, pretty much all of you are going to know how it works, and I'm not going to do the usual stuff, like showing you me fixing a CPU or whatever. I'm going to go a bit like in depth on some things about CPUs with bent back pins and PGA CPUs in general that you get from less than trustworthy places, so like a recycler or something. Anyways, there is like your two methods. One is with one of these refillable pencils without the graphite in there. It's better for like modern CPUs, modern-ish. This is my AMD pin donor chip. This is some FM2, I think. The other would be using a pair of tweezers. I prefer this. Get some shorter ones like these, not the long ones you use for soldering. So you have like shorter leverage and more precision, but that's about it. Now, after straightening a bunch of pins, they're never going to be 100% straight. Now these are all somewhat straightened, and you're always going to see that one pin is like a bit out of whack. And if you put a lot of CPUs where you fixed pins in a socket, in a PGA socket, you're going to damage the socket over time. Wears out rather quickly, like 50 CPUs maybe. So I found a solution to that, to use a cheaper mainboard for bending the pins, and I took this solution to the extreme. I just cut up a bunch of mainboards that didn't work anymore, and well, I used these sockets as a sort of a pre-selecting or pre-bending socket before I put a like recovered CPU, so a CPU that had a bunch of bent pins that I fixed into a good motherboard. And these are just, again, cutouts from broken motherboards, or in this case, some random server motherboard. This is a 423. We have AM2 Plus, so this fits AM2, AM2 Plus, and AM3, AM3 Plus, I think, as well. So can fix all your Phenom 2s and stuff in here. Yeah, let's get to, this is a socket, a slot adapter. I use this for socket 370. 754, 478, socket A. Now, there is something you should consider when like picking your broken prefixing motherboard or socket. It should have a like same or roughly same or smaller holes than the socket on the board you're actually using, because not every socket is created equally. Basically, there is within the same socket not just Lotus and Foxconn, but also like revisions, where you have some socket with more like play and some with less. And I would recommend getting using something that is either the same as the board you're going to bin or bench the CPUs you fixed on, or smaller. Especially for 939, this is critical. Now, I don't have a 939 here, but for 939 I use one from one of my Sun motherboards, because they have super small holes. So when the CPU fits in there and you like, let's just get a chip here, put it in here. This one actually doesn't fit. So bent pin here. That should do it. Now open it and close it a couple of times. And after that, if your socket is like has the same hole thickness and like same amount of play or less than your desktop socket, you're not going to damage the desktop motherboard anymore. There's also something relevant only, I would say, for platforms where you have an exposed die like this here, socket A. Also socket 370. That's why there is a little tail on here. This has a specific function I found really useful to basically pre-select chips before I throw them in the binning board. You're going to just get your multimeter, set it to ohms. Now this is just connected V-core and ground. Just hook it up here. I think you might know where this is going. You can see 8 ohms. Now let's take a random chip. Now these are all dead. So it's not going to be, this one is not a good example. We need, there's a bunch of T-bread chips here as well. Let's use one of those. So another bad example, but this one reads 3.6 ohms. So I would try this chip in a motherboard and see if it posts. If this reads 0 ohms, and we're going to definitely find one of those. There we go, 0 ohms. Especially something you want to consider with chips that don't have IHSs. Because if those get damaged, they often just short out. And like, it's not going to kill your motherboard to put in a shorted out CPU, but it's 0% chance it's going to work. So you're just basically wasting thermal paste and time at that point. So before I test my chips in the motherboard, I put it in this socket and check the resistance. So this one I would just chuck out, and this one here I would test. Now the X obviously signifies that this chip is also dead. This is not 100% accurate, like pre-binning technique. But I would say about 30% of all of my socket A chips were dead. Out of those 30%, about 80% or 70 to 80% were shorted out as well. So I tested some of the shorted out ones, like to definitely confirm that this is a thing. And I think I tested like 20 ones that read 0 ohms, and out of those, not a single one gave me anything else than 0. So this is pretty much confirmed pre-binning step. Another one. See, the first ones I pick for the video are of course not 0. Another one, and now they are all 0. So if they are, like, this socket is not perfect, you have to grind down the edges so you don't have any shorts after cutting it out, or you just use a whole motherboard. I don't like to use a whole motherboard because these things fit relatively well into your hand, and if there is tension on here, you can sort of just do this one-handedly while dialing in BIOS settings, or just noting down binning results, or doing whatever with the other hand. So that's why I prefer to basically cut up my boards. Also, it takes up less storage space. Still have to make those a bit nicer with the rounded corners and everything. I just cut those out with an angle grinder and then like use a bench grinder and make them round. Still have to do that on those ones, but I haven't yet used those so much. Actually, I have worn out one of the 423 ones. Now, before you get all mad at me, because this is a 8-bit socket with a metal lever, this board was about as dead as it gets. Northbridge was shorted out, and well, yeah, no real value anymore in there. And I also fixed it like 3 times previously. Just completely done. this one actually wore out to a point where when you put in a CPU in here and bend it around a couple of times, the pins are going to get crooked instead of straightened out. So I would give you a number for this, but so far I can only give you like a estimate, and the estimate is somewhere between 100 and 200 CPUs, at least for socket A, like for straightening them. After that you have to get another socket. Now obviously you don't have to cut up A bits, but I was particularly pissed at this board here. So something like this is way better choice. This was a A7 and 8X, I think not even the Dash E version, just a random crap board. So not even Enforce 2 Ultra. And I also, that board was also, well, it wasn't dead necessarily, but like it had no vCore VRM anymore and no vMem VRM. So it only ran E-powered. So other than that, it maybe just cut up some random SROC or something. Some, not SROC Enforce 2 obviously. Whatever is cheap. This one is a server, like a slot card like server board. Some random, I think, Biostar, crappy M2 board. That was some OEM, maybe on PC. So don't ruin good boards, obviously, like good boards that are dead but might be fixable. Just use whatever garbage you have around. Again, I think that's about it for the pins now. I think really this step with using a sacrificial socket is necessary. If you have CPUs with a lot of damaged pins. Now, I often have CPUs with anywhere from 10 to 20% of the pins being crooked. So what I like to do is just take a stack of them and like put them beside my PC, start some show and just sort of watch TV shows and bend pins for 8 hours straight. So yeah, that is my pastime, fixing pins on AMD CPUs. I don't even know how many I did so far. Now, I did all of my socket A ones in the last week, and that's about, I think, over 200 CPUs. So it's quite a bit. Socket A is like the perfect CPU for this. For example, socket 370, there the pins break off very easily on socket A. They are very well made and they just stay on there. Even if they are like completely flat to the PCB, you can bend them back just fine. On socket 370 I had to replace a lot of pins that have broken off while fixing them. And on more modern CPUs, obviously it takes longer because they have more pins and also the spacing is tighter, so you really have to be careful that you don't bend any neighboring pins while fixing them. That's why the pencil is probably, like, if you're not super experienced and you're running, you're doing repair on a more modern CPU, I would say the pencil is the way to go, because you're not as likely to make one step forward and 2 steps back by bending neighboring pins. Anyways, I hope this was somewhat helpful and, well, maybe inspires you to go out to some sort of recycling center and get you a bunch of PGA CPUs. Though I wouldn't recommend it necessarily over LGA. LGA is just so much easier. Get yourself a bucket of LGA CPUs and 2 out of 100 about, or so 2% are dead on average. naked die PGA CPUs anywhere from 30 to 50% of that. PGA CPUs with caps, like not caps, IHSs, about including like ones that are unfixable because so many pins are ripped off, or like all the pins are lying flat because they put some heavy object on top of the CPU at the recycler. I would say 10 to 20% are complete write-offs. Anyways, this is going on for way too long now. So yeah, bye.